Today I'm going to talk about neuroplasticity. What does that mean? How can we use our knowledge of neuroplasticity to improve ourselves and to improve our lives? Neuroplasticity basically means that our brains change in response to whatever we do. I got pretty obsessed with this subject about a year and a half ago. I was even considering careers in brain science. So for a couple of months I spent a lot of time studying neuroscience, and I picked up a lot of information about the brain and about neuroplasticity. So hopefully I'll share some of that with you in this video. So neuroplasticity is our brain's ability to change in response to what we do. I think it would help at this stage to give a bit of an overview of what's inside our brains. And I'll start with the cells. So the cells that are inside our brains are called neurons. There's up to 100 billion neurons inside our brain. And these neurons communicate with each other through synapses. Each neuron has up to 5,000 synapses branching off it like so, connecting with all of the other millions of neurons. And what happens is signals are sent from neurons across these synapses by neurotransmitters. And that's how our brains operate. That's how our neurons communicate with each other. Now, for a long time, it was believed in science that our brains were fixed and they don't change, they're not plastic. But in the last couple of decades, scientists have discovered that our brains are actually malleable. They can change. Depending on what we do on a day-to-day basis, our brains change in response, they adapt. For example, when a person learns to drive a car, at first they don't know any of the skills, but as they, through repetition, practice the skills, changing the gears, turning the wheel, learning the indicators, everything to do with the car, connections are formed within their brains, neural connections. And the more we practice a certain skill over and over and over again, the stronger those connections become. There's a saying in brain science, and it is, neurons that fire together, wire together. And what that means is the connections get stronger and stronger. A good metaphor to really illustrate this is, imagine being on top of a hill, a snowy hill, and you're on a snowboard. You snowboard down the hill, a certain path. Imagine going back up to the top of the hill and going down the same path, then doing it again on the same path, over and over again. What would happen is that the path would get deeper. The track that you're traveling down would get deeper and deeper. And just like that, when we practice skills, the connections between our neurons get stronger and stronger and more efficient and faster. So anything can be learned. Anything can be learned. Because of the beautiful principle of neuroplasticity, our brains will change. So a question is, what do you want your brain to get really good at? Personally, I want my brain to get really good at coaching people. I want my brain to get really good at making these videos, speaking about topics I'm interested in, writing about topics I'm interested in. I want my brain to get really good at meditating. I want my brain to get really good at experiencing positive emotions. That's why I practice positive emotions on a daily basis. I practice appreciation every morning and several times throughout the day. So thinking of things I'm really, really grateful for, and really practicing that beautiful feeling of appreciation, because I want my brain to get better at experiencing that positive emotion. Another one is compassion. I want my brain to get better at experiencing compassion, because that is such a therapeutic, healing effect on our well-being and on our bodies. It reduces stress levels and it optimizes our happiness. So I practice compassion for myself and I practice compassion for others. I want other people to be free from suffering and to be healthy and happy. That's practicing compassion and really feeling that. So those are some of the things I want my brain to get really, really good at, and I want the neural connections to develop and form. That brings me to what we can do to kind of enhance neuroplasticity, to nourish it and support it. And there are several things we can do. Number one is physical exercise. So aerobic exercise, going for a walk, going for a swim, going for a cycle several times a week. Studies have shown that this type of exercise increases the production of a biochemical that encourages neuroplasticity in our brain. Aerobic exercise increases the production of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF, and that chemical enhances neuroplasticity. It encourages it. So aerobic exercise also lowers stress hormones, and stress is anti-neuroplasticity. So we want to lower the stress hormones as much as possible, and aerobic exercise is great for that. Stress actually kills brain cells. It actually kills brain cells, it impairs memory, it can lead to a shrinking of the hippocampus. That's the part of the brain responsible for memory. Stress can actually kill brain cells in that area. So, exercise, stress reduction, other ways to bring about stress reduction would be meditation, finding ways to relax, just anything, like I said before, hot showers, being by the fire, having nice hot cups of tea, relaxing, bringing down the stress. Fantastic for our brain health and for our neuroplasticity. What else? Diet is very important. Our brains are made up of almost 60% fats. We need saturated fat in our diet. A lot of our brain is saturated fat. We need saturated fat from whole food sources like eggs and even red meat and some dairy products. We get saturated fat from those. We need monounsaturated fats for our brain health, from olive oil, hazelnuts, avocados, things like that. We also need enough carbohydrates, because our brains use up to 25% of the glucose from our diets. From the energy that we take in, our brains use up to 25% of that. They're like fridges humming away, performing their functions constantly. So exercise, stress reduction, diet, like I said, getting a balance of healthy fats and enough carbohydrates. What else is there? Socializing with people, like-minded people, where you have engaging conversations and conversations that really stimulate the brain and get you focused and thinking. They stimulate the front part of the brain, the pre-frontal cortex, which is responsible for a lot of the executive functions like planning, thinking, all of those. So socializing stimulates that part of the brain and facilitates and encourages neuroplasticity. So that's socializing, exercising, the right diet. What else? Learning new things. So anytime we learn something new, that encourages BDNF in our brain, that encourages neuroplasticity. Things like learning a second language, learning a new musical instrument, learning to dance, learning to drive, learning a new subject. They have identified that musicians, with brain scans, they can tell that musicians, the parts of their brain responsible for motor functions are quite dense. They can see that from the brain scans because that person for years and years and years has been repeating the same skills over and over again. So that part of their brain responsible for those skills changes. Another example is, you may have heard of this one, that London taxi drivers, in comparison to bus drivers, brain scans revealed that the hippocampi of taxi drivers' brains were larger than the bus drivers. And it's believed that that is because taxi drivers need to know more streets, they need to know more intricate networks around the city, so they need to remember more things. And over years, the part of their brain responsible for spatial memory, the hippocampus, gets bigger. So they are some of the main ways that we can encourage and facilitate neuroplasticity in our brains: socializing with like-minded people, exercising, well-balanced diet with the right amount of fats, and learning new things. They are some of the main ways, to make our brains healthy and to optimize neuroplasticity. So, I know I covered a lot of content in this video. I'm almost surprised at the amount of information that came out of me. that just shows how much information I cut through for those couple of months. And I experienced burnout during that time. When you heard me in one of my earlier videos talk about balance, and I was reading from 5 or 6 different books a day, a couple of chapters from each, that was. They were all books about neuroscience, all books about the brain. So it was kind of heavy, dense information, and as such it was no wonder I eventually experienced burnout, because it was such new, complicated information really. But I'm glad I did it. I learned about myself from the process, and I learned a fantastic amount of stuff about the brain. So that is it for this video. I hope you found it helpful. I'm sure you'll agree it's a fascinating subject. And I will leave you with this question. What do you want your brain to get really good at? What will you do in your day-to-day life to encourage neuroplasticity in your brain? So, that is it. Thanks for watching. Talk to you soon.